Hey everybody, welcome to the Michael Bunker Radio Podcast Thingy. This is, I guess, episode 2. I don't know if I'm going to keep track. It's a Monday morning episode. It is barely Monday morning, about 11 o'clock here in Central Texas. And it took me a little while to get down to the office this morning. Had some sleeping problems, so then I slept late. And then I've been having these allergies. So you're going to hear me coughing and wheezing. And that's what's going to happen on the Monday morning version of the Michael Bunker Radio Podcast thing. So I'm trying this again, and I'm going to try to, I'm still trying to work on the technology, make this thing work a little better. It took like 5 hours to upload the first show, and I'm going to try to do it either better, easier, or quicker than that this time. I don't know if I could do that once or twice a week, taking that much time to upload a program, so I'm going to have to find a better way to do it. But until then, I'm going to just keep testing and see how it works. Appreciate those of you who did listen to the initial episode of the Michael Bunker Radio Podcast Thingy, and welcome here again to episode number 2. What I've been doing is kind of barking out on Facebook and asking people if they have questions, topics for today's show. I don't know that I'll always do that. Sometimes I'll just have things that I want to talk about. But anyways, I got down to the office here this morning and rolled a few cigars, did a few things I needed to get done. I'm going to do this radio podcast, and then I've got a bunch of work that I've got to get done. So we'll go ahead and kick it off here. I'm looking at the list here on Facebook, and of course, my friends, they gotta put their jokes up here. Epigenetics and global peace. I don't know what either one of those are, so I'm not going to be able to talk much on that. Nick Cole asked about Tunnel Rats 2. Those of you who don't know, pardon me, Nick Cole is my buddy, co-writer. We wrote Tunnel Rats 1, which used to be called Texocalypse Now. Now it's part of our Digger series, and we're currently working on episode 2. I think we both got really busy in December. And so I'm hoping to get turned to that really, really quickly. And I'm looking forward to it because I love the story. And so there's that. Tunnel Rats 2 coming soon to a bookstore near you. Brandy Chrysler says, gives a lot of topics. Flat Earth, intermittent fasting, Pizzagate, and that horse playing with squeaky toys. The only one of those I probably would even have anything to say about would be Pizzagate, and I don't even know if I have anything to say about that, other than the fact that Pizzagate is this deal where supposedly some people were exposing the fact that some pizza shop in Washington D.C. the owners were using the place to, how do I put this, pedophiles. They were kidnapping young children and selling them through the store, and there were supposedly these codes put on the dark web where pedophiles in DC, politicians and whatnot, could go down there and buy a child and then kill them when they're done or something like that. And enough people took it seriously that some guy, I guess, went into that pizza shop and with a gun and fired a gun or something. I don't know the whole story. What I tell people about all of these things is that you're not likely to ever know. It's very easy to dismiss things because they sound ridiculous, but it's not likely. First of all, you have to be really, really naive to think that bad things don't happen or that they don't happen secretly. And this isn't a left-right thing, and that's what they try. Pizzagate. Since it's a lot of the people that are in focus are on the left and the right is pushing it, of course it's just a conspiracy theory. It's ridiculous. There's no truth to it. It's defamatory, whatever. At the same time, some of the same people who I saw making fun of and teasing and calling Pizzagate a conspiracy theory were pushing this idea that's since been debunked that Donald Trump raped a 13-year-old girl in 1994 with this Epstein guy, who's by the way is involved on both sides. Epstein is a billionaire pedophile who supposedly also was accused of flying Bill Clinton around so Bill Clinton could, abuse children. And so, for those of us who are reasonable, we see this as a nonpartisan possible pedophile ring, and you don't have enough information, and aren't going to get enough information to make a determination whether any of the facts are true. And so instead, what happens in our normal bifurcated two-party idiotic system is the left is going to make fun of and call Pizzagate a conspiracy, and the right is going to make fun of and call the accusations against Donald Trump a conspiracy. And the same people are really involved in the background. So we don't know what happened, and we're not going to know what happened. And nobody in the that's one thing I can tell you is that you're not going to see this movie unless it's done by one of the partisan side. You're not going to see the movie that uncovers the fact that these political leaders on both sides are pedophiles, and it took a long time for it to start coming out about the Catholic Church and the priest and whatnot, and they finally made a movie. I guess it came out in 2015 about that, but you're not going to see this anytime soon. Nobody's going to touch it. And I don't know anything about a horse playing with a squeaky toy. And the next one, Edward Sullivan said mandatory vaccination, chemtrails, electoral college, religion, and Coke versus Pepsi. I responded on this and I said, that would be a hell of a show if I covered all of those things in one show. But I'm a low energy individual. And so the only one I would probably touch right here is Coke versus Pepsi. I don't drink either one. I don't drink soda pop. I don't drink sugar, straight sugar. I think both of them are poisons and ought to be probably categorized as poisons. I might drink some Coke with bourbon in it. That'd be the only reason I would drink it. It's not not food. So I mean, I'm in the South, and when I did drink those, I only drank Coke, and it was because Pepsi was too sweet. I talked a lot about electoral college back in the election, but I'm just tired of talking about it. As a monarchist and a theoretical anarchist, I want power as far away from the masses as possible. And so the Electoral College serves a little bit of that purpose, but not much. This is a good one. Christian Saunders said more than 80% of all life species on Earth, mainly insects and itty-bitty things that live in the sea, remain undiscovered. Discuss. And then he added, and if they are undiscovered, how do they know they exist? I think this is probably true, and not just of itty-bitty things. I think there's we're constantly discovering new species, even on land. And I think a huge portion of the world is still mostly either undiscovered or is not highly trafficked. And so I wouldn't be surprised at all if this number isn't true. I don't know how they would know, unless they, took some random sample of ocean water. Pardon me. And then, I don't know, maybe in the depths, maybe down the Marianas Trench or something like that, and then tested and said, oh, we don't even know what half of these things or 80% of these things are. I think it's probably a guess. I think most of science is not really science. I think most of it is guesses. And you'll hear me talk about that a lot. Zen Di Pietro said high fructose corn syrup, rational choice or sweetener of the devil? Certainly not a rational choice. Again, I don't eat sugar very much. I might have a cookie every once in a while, rarely. I try not to. If I do choose a sweetener, it's usually honey, which I think is natural, and I don't eat these other things very much. Although I think high fructose corn syrup is probably about as bad as you can get as far as sweetener choices, other than the artificial, completely artificial sweeteners. What I know. I'm passing up John Prater talking about his 6 pairs of Star Wars underwear because I don't get into Illuminati stuff. And I ask again, I don't know how Ravonda Lee Said planting garlic. Well, that's kind of a big topic. We do plant a lot of garlic here, and our garlic's looking great this year with the warm winter and a lot of moisture. So the garlic's looking great. We planted a lot this year, probably over 2,000 bulbs. And we should have our, Lord willing, we never know what's going to happen between now and May, but we should have our best year ever, the way it's looking right now, but you never know. A couple of times in the last week I've come out and the horses have been in the garden, but they don't tend to go after the garlic, so that's good. And then my friend Richard King says, what is man's purpose in life? Seriously. Of course, the theological answer to that is man's purpose in life is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. And of course, I believe that our purpose is to glorify God. At the same time, I think that we have purposes that are ancillary or additive or corollary, I guess is the right term, to that. And those things have to be discovered individually. How we do that. And so, there are people who are atheistic, agnostic, or of other religions other than my own choice. And whatever you believe about the religious denominations, different cults, whatever. I believe everybody's is in some way glorifying God. Some are glorifying God and being utilized for His purposes and in a positive way. And in my particular belief system, this is mankind being used, brought together, gathered together, in the Church of God for advancing and showing forth God's manifold wisdom to the principalities and powers in the heavenly realms. And at the same time, those who don't believe those things, according to my belief system, are being glorified in their selfishness, narcissism, and eventual destruction, which manifest God's power and justice and so forth. So, but I said there's corollary things, and that is individuals have purposes that either are known or unknown to them, and some of those things are as simple as being the person that helps another at a particular time. So feeding the hungry and clothing the naked, and taking care of widows and old people, and lifting up those who are cast down, and possibly just a hand out or a hand up at a opportune moment. Teaching somebody something that's eternal in nature, benefits them in the long run. And allows them to fulfill their purpose. I think there are people who God has put here to be support for others who have more obvious or evident purposes. And so all of those things are have to be taken into account. And so, when I do get this question occasionally in private emails and things like that, of course, I'm not an evangelical. I'm not one of these people that thinks that our purpose is to go out there and do things for God according to our own will and our own power or whatever that is. And I think a lot of the damage done in the world today is by religious zealots who think that they're doing things for God. And so the scriptures teach us how to live and how to live and love and how to serve, and to do so in humility and with a contriteness of heart, recognition of our own frailties and failings. And in doing these things, we are glorifying God, which is our ultimate purpose. All right. So that said, I had written down some from emails and messages, and that's, I don't want to, this is probably not what the show's eventually going to be like. It's not going to be me just reading a list of questions and topics, because I really don't want to do that too much. I just zoomed through those in about 15 minutes, so that's not too bad. I did want to talk about the Beyond Off-Grid documentary that launched the day after Christmas. And it's doing really, really well. And we'll be rolling out in more venues this year. Some of you will be able to go see that thing at a theater probably. So I'm excited about that. I'm not the maker of the film. How it started off was I wrote a book called Surviving Off-Grid, and that book did really, really well. That was like 2000, early 2010 or 2000. I think it was 2010. And in 2011, I got a message from Sean Tuin, who is the director of the film, and he wanted to come out and talk to me about doing this a film about the book, the nonfiction book. And I wasn't really that interested. I kind of played it off and told him, I'd been contacted by a bunch of different TV shows and that were not the kind of thing I wanted to do. But he came out here actually and talked me into it. And it started off, I guess they were going to kind of cover the chapter headings and the things that I wrote about in the book. And then later on, they came out here and spent 3 or 4 days in the heat of the summer. And that was pretty cool, and took a lot of video, did a lot of interviews. And then they kind of left and ended up traveling the country, interviewing historians and philosophers and farmers and people who have a lot of information and background on agrarianism and what's going on in the world and the history of the world and Roman Empire and all these things. And they ended up putting together, it took about 4 years, and they ended up putting together this, pardon me, this really great documentary called Beyond Off-Grid. You can find it at beyondoffgrid.com. I'll put up a link on this video so that people can click and go find it. And so, that went out in December, and almost always, and this happened with the book, and it happened when I was traveling and speaking on these topics. When you combine the fact that a proof that the world is a tenuous place and that we rely on really unsustainable systems of delivery of goods and services, the perilous nature of the bifurcated society, the left-right dialectic, the hostility that America in particular has engendered around the world, and you point out the evident and imminent destruction of this system just based on the pattern of societies in the past, particularly the Roman Empire, and then you combine those facts with what we believe about what the scriptures teach about the way we should be living, a life more dependent on the soil and on God and on production rather than just blind consumption, rural type of living rather than urban living, and then you add that to a bit of reality about how we should live and the negatives of the way we do live, then of course always get these people who are so freaking defensive. And it's just it would be hilarious if it wasn't sad that when somebody feels condemned by facts, they feel like they have to defend themselves or they have to rationalize whatever it is they're doing or not doing, rather than just see something. Go back to Coke and Pepsi. If I was a Coke drinker and somebody said, okay, this stuff is poisonous, and here's the science that shows how poison it is to your body, causes heart disease, abrasion of your vascular system, and all of these other things, diabetes, and all of these things. And in addition to that, this is what the companies do. This is the destruction that they do to the planet, to everything else. And you point this out. If I still wanted to drink Coke, I would just drink Coke. I mean, I wouldn't sit there and rationalize and justify. Just do what you want to do. You don't have to get defensive. And if you think that it's right that those things are bad and you still want to do it, then just do it. But I inevitably, when the book came out, I would get bombed with emails of these people like, well, I'm 65 years old, and what am I supposed to do? And of course, it's never their fault. Where they are is never their fault. The condition that they're in is never their fault. Whatever frailties they have is not their fault. And the fact that they are enslaved in this debt-based consumer system is not their fault. and it's what it ends up being is my fault that I'm mentioning it because I made them feel bad, rather than them just seeing the reality and maybe praying that somehow they could get delivered from it. And so I really have no patience and don't even respond anymore to those type of emails and messages. And so then the movie came out, and I started getting some of these again, and I just don't care to hear it. I don't mind if somebody wants to say they disagree with the premise or they find some historical evidence to be lacking or something like that, or they just or like Lewis Mumford, who was early on in his career, he was an author in the past century who wrote a lot about cities. He was one of the big guys that pushed efficient and effective cities and highways and wrote some awesome books. But later on in his life, he came to realize how destructive that kind of urban plan for society and the culture was, because it de-emphasized production, and emphasized consumption, and therefore the power base of what created the strength of the economy and the strength of the system in the first place was being degraded through time. But even Lewis Mumford, pardon me, Lewis Mumford during his height, he would have just said, "Hey, I think you're wrong about your conclusions. I think cities are good, and I'm fine with that. What I hate is someone who nods to the premise and then makes excuses. I just hate that. And so I'm really looking forward to a lot more people seeing the film, not because I want more of the barrage of rationalizations, justification, and anger, but because I think a lot of people really are taking it to heart and are likely to make some, even those people that live in the suburbs or live in cities, that can start growing something on a windowsill, just whatever steps can be taken to become more productive and less dependent on things that are destroying us. And so there was that. I saw that I didn't watch the Golden Globes. I don't watch stupid stuff like that. I did read commentary. I read Meryl Streep's speech, and then I read people commentary on both sides about it. Of course, we lived in this kind of the left-right divide where the fringe sees everything from their own particular viewpoint, and Meryl Streep's far, 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 far on the left, and a lot of the people that were making fun of her virtue signaling are equally far on the right. And I read the speech, and then I was thinking about it last night. And the thing is, I think it's possible, and just bear with me here. I think it's possible to, and she mentioned, Trump making fun of this now famous video of Trump supposedly making fun of a handicapped person, a writer, and that was appalling. It should have been. I mean, if that's what he did, I don't know what his real intentions were, but it looked as though he was making fun of a handicapped person. And if that's what he did, that's appalling, unacceptable behavior. My mother is handicapped and was born with spina bifida, shouldn't have lived past her teens, was saved by some kind of miraculous medical procedures, and spent a good part of her life in hospitals. Should have never had children, and I know there are a lot of you who, knowing me, would agree that she shouldn't have had children, but medically should not have had children. And my sister was born handicapped. She was born with a club foot, and spent a lot of time learning how to walk and those types of things. And so I certainly don't support anybody making fun or ridiculing handicapped people. But at the same time, I think that you can be appalled by that, and also be appalled by people kidnapping a handicapped person and torturing them on Facebook Live. And this is my problem with the left and the right, is that the left, and I could name names, my friends in Austin, my friends who every one of them just were appalled by what happened with Donald Trump making fun of a handicapped person. And then these people who have their same politics, which means they hate Trump and don't think he should be president, kidnap a handicapped kid, and torture them live, and total silence from the same people. And so it makes me question whether or not you really do care about handicapped people at all. I think it's possible to be appalled by both things, to be equally horrified by, and I don't mean equally as in they're equal, because they're not. It's worse to torture somebody than it is to tease them. I would much more prefer that people tease my mother and my sister than torture them because of their political position, or because of the political position of the torturers. But I can be equally horrified by both. I can decry both, and I can say both things are bad, both things ought not happen. And it tells you something when somebody like Meryl Streep can go out there in a virtue signaling speech, and right days after this torturing incident where these people were obviously making this handicapped person say anti-Trump things, and completely act like that incident didn't happen. And the worst thing that's ever happened in the history of the world is Donald Trump made fun. And what happens immediately when you talk about this, if you're on the left, you're immediately offended because you, like Don Lemon, this newscaster, who said this was not evil, this was just children doing stupid things, and where were their parents? That's an offensive response to torture of a handicapped person. And so the left will immediately dismiss what happened in the name of their politics, and the right will dismiss what happened in the name of their politics. And then the reasonable people, those of us who are reasonable people, can look at both of them and go, you're really all crap. You're all crap. Meryl Streep is crap. And she is, because she's sitting there in front of a bunch of millionaires who are deceived and besotted by their own righteousness, little tornado of self-righteousness they have constantly circling around their head, who take their opportunity before America to continue to demean and insult half of America because of their own political position, when in reality she doesn't even care that a handicapped person was tortured live on television. Were I giving a speech after her because I don't care about my career and I don't care if people don't like me, I would have vocally rebuked both Donald Trump and these people that tortured this handicapped person, and Meryl Streep. And that would have been the end of my career. And I would have told them all to F off, because that's what they really need to do. And so, it's that kind of thing that kind of gets me worked up, is that we can't see an incident with any type of reasonable view of it. And people have to dive in and defend their particular position, and they're all just horrible people, and that's the result of it. And so my whole point of that is that it's not mutually exclusive, that the ridiculing of handicapped people and the torturing of handicapped people are both wrong, and both ought to be opposed. And if you go out of your way, and I know there's some idiot out there right now who's going, well, these young people who torture, they weren't running for president, as if somehow the moral relativism of it is more important, because one of them, the fact is the torturing is much, much worse than making fun of somebody. Both are disqualifying in my mind, not legally, because we have legal things that people have to do to be a president, but as far as morally disqualifying. Just stop defending it. Stop defending both of them, and stop saying like, well, it's okay because these guys weren't running for president. Then it's okay to go torture people, and it's not, and they're not the same. All right, so I'm gonna go look back on here on Facebook, see if I've got any more comments. Wow, a bunch of them came in. How do you accommodate other religions and reconcile them with your own religious beliefs? Are there similarities that cross culture? I don't attempt to reconcile them. I accommodate them in that I believe that people are free to have their own opinions, free to develop their own opinions. We have laws that prevent people, and ought to prevent people, from doing harm or depriving others of their rights, life, liberty, or property. Outside of that, I'm perfectly fine with anybody having any religious view they want, even those that, but I don't attempt to reconcile them. I think that that's a huge mistake, because the whole concept of a religious belief is that you believe it is truth, and you could be wrong, but you believe it's truth. And then you believe by nature, because A does not equal not A, if you believe that your religious belief is true, then you must believe that a religious belief that's not that is contrary to that, is not true. If they are talking about the same thing in the same aspect. And so I believe my religious belief is true, and I think everybody should believe that about their religious belief. And by nature, I believe that other religious beliefs that are contrary to mine are not true. That's just logic. Pardon me. And so I don't try to reconcile them. What I do is I understand why people, and I study them, and I don't want to be wrong about my own beliefs. So I'm constantly studying, listening to people, having empathy for them. At the same time, I don't minimize or try to reconcile or blend what I believe with what they believe. There's similarities that cross cultures. I think there are. I don't think that those things are in any way foundational to the concept of truth, but I think there are a lot of similarities in a lot of different religions. I think most reasonable religions have some system of morality, that seem to be universal. Reasonable religions don't advocate murder, and there's a differentiation between killing, which is something that is lawful in certain circumstances, and they could be different across cultures, but there's difference between that and a murder, for example. Stealing, violating life, liberty, or property. And I think reasonable religions do that, and I think that there's, in some level, there's probably other cultural similarities. I don't really get into any type of harmony or trying to harmonize contrary belief systems. But I do appreciate that question. Also, Sarah asked, when do you roll spliffs? You have to help me out, Sarah. I don't know what a spliff is. That's probably some kind of English or slang. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I could do a search here. Hold on just a minute. Let me look this up. You get over here. You go, what is a spliff? I hope this doesn't bring anything like sexual. No porn comes up here. My computer's really slow. Oh, a marijuana cigarette. Okay. So like, I don't know the other terms for that. I don't know the other terms for a marijuana cigarette. When do I roll spliffs? I don't roll spliffs. That's not a moral judgment on those people who do roll spliffs. I personally believe that rolling spliffs ought to be legal. Just because I know people that smoke marijuana, and I don't see them going out and driving dangerously or being overly exertive in their doing damage and things like that. Most people I know that smoke weed, they just go sit on their sofa and eat. And so I'm not against it at all, but I do not roll spliffs. This is not. I roll tobacco into cigars. All right, my cousin Dale's on here. He's got a what's up with everybody in global warming? He says these are the topics he wants me to talk about: tipping at Sonic, global warming, free will, Cowboys versus the Packers, best Western movie of all time. Well, those are some great ones. I'm gonna go through these real quick. Tipping at Sonic. I'm one of those people that is just I'm uncomfortable with either thing. I usually tip. I tip because I feel bad, not because I feel like I've received a tremendous amount of service from this person. It's usually $1. I think I tip $1 at Sonic, and because they did bring it out to me. I didn't go stand up at the counter and go get it, and so I have some appreciation. I don't think it's worth $1 to bring me my food, 15 feet. If the person's wearing roller skates, I automatically feel good about it. I feel like they earned their $1. If they're particularly friendly and all that, I feel better about it. I feel like most of the time, the tip is I feel bad. I feel that it's too much. That's what I feel. I'm a big tipper at restaurants. I always tip minimum 20%. I never do 15%. I always do 20%, and I taught my wife and my children to do 20%. And I often do more if it's worth it. So I'm torn about tipping at Sonic. I do it, but I feel like I'm doing it because I have to do it. Global warming. I think global warming. This is going to fall into a category that I'll speak of on this all the time when I get science questions. I don't believe any of the accepted opinions. This is my position on science. I think science, for the most part, what's called science today, which is really the interpretation of individual studies that can be fraught with error and political opinion, political leaning, that this is not really science. There is some science when it comes to earth science and all of that, weather science, that probably does indicate things that are going on, but I don't know that these things are abnormal. And if you talk about human, and let me tell you, I'm an environmentalist, which I know my conservative friends don't like that terminology, but I am. I do believe we have a responsibility to not harm the earth, not because the earth is alive in any real sense of consciousness, but because we live here and we want our offspring to be able to live here. And I don't think you should be able to poison things. I think the punishment for poisoning ought to be draconian. I think that individuals ought to be able to sue people who poison, and to do so in their own county with a jury of their own peers. I don't think that you should be forced to go to Bentonville, Arkansas, to sue some oil company that poisons your groundwater. So I'm an environmentalist. I don't think that I think we're better off that we've limited. I'm against cars, so I think we're better off that we've limited what comes out of your tailpipe, and that certainly does poison the air. Not that I think that this necessarily had to be a huge government agency to do these sort of things. I'm against things like mostly what happens with the EPA and Superfunds. So you think I'm all over the board, but I'm actually just a reasonable person. And I don't believe in man-made global warming. I don't believe it. And the reason I don't believe it is because I know that this volcano that went off not too long ago put out 10,000 more times in a day CO2 gases and those type of things than we've produced since we've been producing CO2. But there's political reasons that people want this stuff, and some of those political reasons I'm for. I'm for some of those things. The science is to me is being used politically and not particularly a fair representation of what's. I think we go through cycles in climate, and we're probably going through a cycle now that will. And I've lived long enough to know to remember the 70s where we had to write papers on the new ice age. So it's things change pretty quickly. Free will. Free will does not exist. It is a myth perpetuated by false religion. We have a will. We do make choices. We do suffer consequences and reap benefits for our actions that are operative of our will. And at the same time, to say the will is free is a ludicrous notion. And that is because everything is governed by laws that are above it. Water is free to flow downhill, to conform itself to the earth and to the physics and to the science that are applied upon it, the laws that are applied upon it. And in doing so, in submitting to all of those, it is both predictable and free. What water is not free to do is to flow uphill without law and science being applied to it, force being applied to it. And this is the way that the will works. You have a will. It is certainly not free. If you think you have a free will, just go outside right now. I'll wait, and just go to the moon. Just go. I'll wait here. And you can't right now because you are limited by physics and by numerous other realities that impose upon your will. And since ability is one of the primary impositions on the will, then we have to examine what ability is. And do you have the ability to act contrarily to your disposition subconsciously? In other words, are you free to choose what you do not choose? Of course not. And so what's happened is, especially in religious circles, Armenian, and I know that both Dale and I come from a Southern Baptist background, which is used to be not a free will belief system, but has changed through time so that now it is hardcore free will dogma. But I don't even know where I was going with that because something binged in my ear. So anyways, I know we both come from this background of free will theism, and it's primarily in this religious milieu that the idea of free will as an organ, something like your heart, an organ that produces decisions. And so when I used to preach against free will, and I can't lose that, and I never have lost a debate on the topic. But when I used to preach against it, some guy, clever guy, the guy who thinks he's a genius, I would watch him as I was talking, and he would reach over and he would pick something up. It was a paper cup or a styrofoam cup or a piece of trash or a plate or something. And I would watch his hand move towards it because I knew exactly what he's going to do. He's going to pick this thing up and he's going to hold it out and say, I can drop this or not drop this. This is somehow proof of his free will. So I would stop what I was saying in the middle of him reaching for it, and I would say, I know what you're going to do. You're going to reach for that item and you're going to tell me that you have free will to drop it or not drop it, but you did not have free will to have the predisposition to think the things that you're thinking concerning free will right now. And so I saw you reaching for it, and I knew what you were thinking. The evidence of choice is not proof of free will. It's not at all. In order for the will to be free, you would have to have a absolute lack of predisposition. You'd have to have an absolute lack of any law applying, not known or unknown, applying to the decision. Even if I held out two identical gold coins, one in my right hand and one in my left, held them before you and said, pick one or the other, you are naturally predisposed to several things. You're predisposed to an initial decision. You're also predisposed, if you are the type of person who's a contrarian or believes in luck or nonsense like chance, to determine which one you're going to pick and then pick the other one. That's a natural predisposition that you have. And you're also, this goes to Princess Bride decision on the iocane powder. You may have a predisposition to double back to your first choice. What you do not have at any time is a will that is a blank slate, a tabula rasa. You don't have that, and you're never going to have that. Now, all of this, since we're speaking of it in particular in the realm of religion, which is where generally this topic is debated, is even more extreme because of what the scriptures teach about the will, that our will is fallen. It's part of our fallen nature. It's part of the curse of the original fall. We do not have the ability to choose good. We cannot choose good in and of ourselves because we are not sick, but we are dead in trespasses and sins, and therefore totally depraved and incapable of any good. Even those things that we think are good in our flesh, when they are operative of our flesh, are not good but are bad by nature and are a natural, predictable product of our character and our nature and our fallen self and the stony heart. And that anything that we do that is good, for example, have faith, believe, these the scripture clearly says are gifts. So a belief is a gift. So if you cannot choose to believe, and you cannot, Your belief, if you have it, is a gift. And according to the scriptures that say plainly, the gift of belief. Faith is a gift. The scriptures are plain about. It's not something that you have in and of yourself. It's something that is given unto you. It comes from outside. And even the apostles said unto Christ, Lord, grow our faith. So even the ability to grow your faith is not yours, but it comes from outside. And then the minute I say there's no free will, of course, the arguments just fall like dominoes. Okay, well, that means we're robots. No, it doesn't. It's a ridiculous assertion. It's illogical. It means that there's nothing praiseworthy then in our good acts, and there's nothing guilt-worthy in our negative acts, and therefore God is arbitrary and capricious. I know every single argument, and those just fall over naturally. So at some point, Dale will have to go have a beer, and I'll go through each one of those arguments with you. Cowboys versus Packers. I don't care. I'm from Texas, so I'll pick the Cowboys, but I won't watch the game. Best Western movie of all time. The movie that I pick out and will watch at any time is Tombstone, and so I'm going to say Tombstone. Although I don't think it is a particularly it's a great entertaining movie. It's not a particularly epic Western. I would say probably Lonesome Dove if I had to pick a particularly epic Western. So those are going to be my final picks. All right, guys. I've kind of come to the end of this here. This is longer than I thought it was going to be. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I'm going to try to do one of these every Monday, and I may do one more later in the week. Get your questions in. You can always send them to me at bunker2k@hotmail.com, or get on Facebook and just PM me a question if you want me to talk about it on the show. You can always find me at michaelbunker.com, and I'll be talking more about other ways to be in contact with me soon enough. All right, y'all. I appreciate you tuning in. This has been the Michael Bunker Radio Podcast Thingy, and I'll talk to you all soon.